So I've been traveling for about 2 years. It's been quite intense. I've been learning quite a lot. However, it came to a bit of stop. We decided that it's time to settle a little bit and try some other plans. So we started to plan a SAVE training institute, which we were going to start in Slovenia. However, right before we signed the contract for that institute, we got a phone call from Anita Kranz from the SAVE movement, who said, Shivonne, you and Laura need to just postpone everything for a little while because something huge is happening in London. Something called Animal Rebellion. We don't really know what it is about, but this is going to be big. This is going to be massive, so you have to postpone everything and go to London to join Animal Rebellion full time. So we did. We went to London. So I'm going to talk to you about why, how, and why Animal Rebellion exists and why it is important. So let's look at where we are. So we're going to look today at where we are, the climate urgency, extinction of species, ecosystem collapse, the impact of animal farming and fishing, and what we can do about it. So normally this talk is about 90 minutes, so I'm trying my best to squeeze it down to 40 minutes. So let's look at where we are. So as you can see here on this graph is what we are doing. And then you can see what we are causing, what it leads to, and what's the outcome in the end. So intensive overfarming and fishing, deforestation to make way for farming and logging, chemical use and pollution leads to greenhouse gases, habitat destruction, desertification, eutrophication, and more, which then again leads to climate urgency, ecological crisis, and extinction of species, which again leads to animal suffering and human suffering. We are looking at crops failure, floods, droughts, and a lot of bad stuff that will happen to us that we will all feel. And this is not new. This has been warned about for many, many years. Already in the late 19th centuries, scientists first argued that human emissions of greenhouse gases can change the climate. And then if we look at 1992, warning of 1,700 scientists. And then 2017, 15,000 scientists coming out and saying, hey, we need to rethink what we are doing. And then 2019, IPBES report, 1 million species to go extinct. So yeah, this doesn't look really good. And the science is backing it. So yeah, let's look at the climate chaos. So the warming of the planet is already leading to more extreme climate, with more severe droughts, floods, and storms. Prolonged droughts are putting pressure on food crops, and many animal and plant species are being driven to extinction. So the climate breakdown. So let's just look at this graph. This is the temperature rise on the planet. And this is just from 1850. And as you can see, it goes very, very drastically from 1980s, and it just keeps going up. The planet is warmer now than at any point in the past 650,000 years. At the current projections, we are heading for a minimum of 3-degree rise, which will bring serious consequences. So but what is causing all of this? Buildup of greenhouse gases. Humans making products of buildings, so us building all these buildings everywhere, building farms, building big cities, burning fossil fuels, habitat destruction, deforestation, and those trees absorb CO2, but we are burning them down, and that releases a carbon footprint into the atmosphere, and there is no CO2 no trees to capture it. So we are basically digging ourselves down in a very, very bad hole. And one of the main causes is eating animals, one of the biggest contributor to land clearing, deforestation, as well as giving us a very, very high carbon footprint. And all those gases stay in the atmosphere for years. To add to the problem, the melting ice is creating a feedback loop. So as the ice melts, we lose more and more of the reflective white surface. So the dark sea absorbs more heat, so the Earth warms more quickly. So if you look at this, the temperature rise, Arctic sea melts, and as the reflective ice disappear, darker oceans will absorb more heat. And this will just keep on going into a loop and get worse and worse and worse. This, again, leads to more forest fires. Each forest fire, again, huge amount of carbon into the atmosphere, and no trees to capture it. So the whole thing is a huge, serious spiral into chaos. Okay, so what if we reach 3 degrees? We are looking at massive crop failure, mass wildfires, heat waves, floods and droughts, sea level rise, land desertification. We are looking at Middle East and West Africa could be inhabitable. And we are looking at 1 billion climate refugees by 2050, and we are already struggling. So how are we going to deal with these things? We need to prevent it. This is really scary stuff when you think about it. 52% of the world wildlife species disappeared in just 40 years. If you look at this, 60% of all beings on this planet are livestock, 36% humans, 4% wild animals. I think that should be the totally other way around, 4% humans and no livestock and all of them wild animals. That would be so much more beautiful. However, not sure we will ever get back to that point. And it's really, really crazy what we have done to this beautiful planet. Hedgehog dropped by 50% since 2000. I don't know if anyone have noticed seeing less of them running around. I remember when I was a kid, it was more normal to see them running around. This might even more scary. We are looking at an insect apocalypse. 75% decline in flying insects. So this tweet here is quite interesting. Do you remember the days when a drive down the motorway left your windscreen caked in dead insects? Where did they go? Anyone remember those days? And I guess most of us in this room just wish that those insects would find a way to get out of the road and hide from the cars and the traffic. However, sadly, this is not the case. The insect apocalypse lead us to ecosystem change, ecosystem collapse. So one example of that, without bugs, without insects, there won't be any plants, there won't be any crops. A UN report states that 1/3 of plant products eaten / used by humans rely on bee pollination, directly or indirectly. So without pollinators, we will not have fruits like apple, peaches, apricots, figs, pears, grapefruit, plums, papaya, tomatoes, mango, blueberries, raspberries, almond, cashew. We're also looking at no coffee, tea, sugar. So yeah, you get the picture. Without insects, we are fucked. So how about fishing and farming? What does they have to do with all of this? So as many of us probably have seen these numbers before. So greenhouse gas emissions for animal agriculture, on the higher scale, up to 51%, and that is if you include deforestation and everything around it as well. However, the lowest is 14.5%. So this is the United Nations advisory. And no matter if you go for the lowest or the highest, it will still be more than all transportation combined. So why aren't anyone doing anything about this? Why aren't the government doing something? And now let's look at the Oxford study. Oxford University did 570 studies over 5 years, which covered 38,700 farms in 119 countries, and 40 products representing 90% of global protein and calorie consumption. They looked at the emission from across the whole product life cycle, including transportation and mitigation. So here's what they found. As you can see, the red line here, on top of all the things above that is animal products, and everything below is plant products. And you see the blue line all the way down here, here is compared cow's milk and soy milk on the bottom line. So if you look at the greenhouse gas emission side, it's quite intense, quite heavy. Acidification, eutrophication, and land use as well. And it's not just a slight little different, it's a huge, huge difference. And this is maybe one of the most important studies that has been done in this context. And the study also found that transition to a plant-based society would release 3.1 billion hectares of land, release 19% of arable land, reduce greenhouse gases by 6.6 billion tons, which is 49%. And if you factor in reforestation, then we are talking about a 71% reduction of greenhouse gas emission just by transitioning to a plant-based food system. We already produce enough to feed the world. It is overconsumption, especially of animal protein, by the global middle class. Inequality and waste, and inadequate production and distribution systems. To feed the world in a way our planet can sustain, we need to consume and produce food differently. So it's time that we start new thinking. And a good example of some of the huge problems we are causing could be the fishing industries. So yeah, this is all fish, and this is just one vessel. The impact of fishing has led marine scientists to say that the threat faced by our marine ecosystem is much larger than any other environmental threat, like increasing pollution. So we are talking a lot about banning straws. I think we see that everywhere. However, 46% of plastic in the ocean is abandoned fishing net. So, and straws, you know how much that is? 0.3%. So if everyone who would ban straws, which a lot of people are doing, which is great. Of course, we need to start thinking, we need to start doing small things as well. But if everyone who bans straw could take the next step and stop being a part of fishing, we will be way more further on this journey. So, okay. If we're looking away from the fishing nets, what about fish farming? That could be another solution if you're looking beyond the ethical aspect of it. So, I'm not going to go too much into the ethical aspect of it because I'm sure most of us do not think this look very, very comfortable for any of these fishes. However, even if this would be a nice experience for them, it is still very hard on our ecosystem. So, in Norway, for example, 49,000 fishes escaped from fish farms. And these fishes are bringing diseases, and they are not the same. They're not the same breed often as what is in the ocean, in the rivers and in the oceans. So this is spreading a huge amount of this disease. And actually, the lowest impact aquaculture systems still exceed emissions of all vegetable proteins. So this is no longer a fringe issue. This is now being recognized by the UN advisor. So this is a leak of a report from last month from the IPCC. And it says that amongst the measures put forward by the report is the proposal of a major shift towards vegetarian and vegan diets. The consumption of healthy and sustainable diets based on grains, vegetables, nuts, and seeds presents major opportunities for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The denial of the impact of animal agriculture and fishing on the climate is tantamount to denying climate change. Only 30% of birds on the planet are wild. The other 70% are farmed animals. There are billions of land animals and trillions of marine animals who have harrowing stories of their own. Each and every one of them, animals who are suffering, feeling pain, everyone individuals who don't want to suffer and want to be free. I'm going to share a story of animal resistance. Because animal rebellion take huge inspiration and courage to act from animals who are regularly fighting back. Their action, their desire to live, their struggle, that makes us realize that we have to take bigger and bolder non-violent action for them and for the climate. So this is the hero cow from Poland. I'm not sure, some of you might have heard about her. So she was raised on a beef farm. She was a very special cow. I think all of them are special. However, she was known to be very powerful, be quite resistant, and she resisted control. She was not the easiest one of the herd. So the farmer, the day came, and he was going to send her off to slaughter. And he advised the workers to tranquilize her because she was so fierce. The workers, yeah, we are used to fighting with cows, so there is no need for tranquilizer. We have this, we got this, they said. All right, they started loading her onto the truck, tried to force her onto the truck. She didn't want to. They used the electric cob, and still she didn't really listen to them, which I guess most of us wouldn't. However, they managed to push her a bit further, but then she made her escape. She managed to run away, but then another worker managed to come in the middle and try to stop her. But she didn't break down. She actually broke his arm in her fight on getting out of there. And she kept running. She was not going to be sent to her death. She kept running and running, and she ran across the fields, and then she came to a lake. Okay, we need to remember that this is a cow who probably never been outside those fields, never seen a lake before. But she saw this lake, and she jumped straight into it and started swimming to get to safety, to pursue the followers, to get them away. And she kept swimming, and the worker reported that they saw her underwater for long periods of time. And then eventually she managed to get off to an island, and she managed to get to safety. So yeah, she lived free for a little while. The workers, or the farmer, he didn't want to let her go just like that, because he could sell her body and get money for her. So he called the fire brigade and asked them to help. The fire brigade went out to the island, and they tried to catch her. She was not ready to get sent to slaughter. She did not want to die. So she actually took off and she swam to another island. And there she managed to stay for a little while. However, while this all was happening, people started to talk about this, and this reached mass media. So people started to think like, yeah, she deserved to live, right? And a politician who wanted some extra votes decided to buy her from the farmer and bring her to safety. So he managed to arrange a rescue team, some veterinarians who would go out to the island and shoot her with tranquilizers and bring her back to safety. So they went to the island, and they all came to the island, and they managed to shoot her with tranquilizers, 3 arrows, and they managed to load her onto a truck, which was, very similar to the slaughterhouse truck she was escaping from. And this could have been a very, very happy story. However, she came back into captivity, and she knew that this was not where she wanted to go, and she didn't understand anything what was happening. She didn't know where she was going. So in the truck, she died of a heart attack. This is just one story of an animal who is trapped in an unjust system. But there is so many billions, trillions of them. So I want us to take a minute of silence in solidarity with all the animals. You might want to ground your feet and center your breath. And we will take a minute of silence to remember all those animals who were born into captivity, where they suffer and are killed. To remember how they love and how their families are torn apart. To remember how they resist every day and fight back every day. To remember those who free themselves and those who are freed by others. To remember all those, whether big or small, on the land or in the sea, as well as those that are invisible to us in our everyday, in our soils and in our homes. And to remember all those whose homes and habitats are invaded and destroyed. But also to remember all those who live free from human interference and oppression, and the possibility that this offers to all others. So, grief is not a disorder or a disease or a sign of weakness. It is an emotional, physical, and spiritual necessity. The price you pay for love, and the only cure for grief is to grieve. So we are dealing with a lot of grief in this movement, and it's important to recognize those feelings. Many of you might have heard about the Children's March, which contained both grief and sacrifice, and I want to touch a little bit about that. So the Children's March took place in 1963 in Birmingham. Martin Luther King was released from jail and began a new tactic to end segregation. So they inspired the children to march. So in the church, they were training up children in nonviolence, and they were encouraging them to stay positive and use humor. So they sent out 50 children at a time from the church. 50 children went out, and they got arrested, kids from 6 years old. And 50 new ones came out, and they were queuing up behind the church. And as they kept going, as they kept getting arrested, new children kept coming, and they came from different cities. So the police used different tactics. They used dogs, which of course was quite horrendous from both sides, the dogs and protesters. They also used fire hoses to get them away, and lots of people got really bad injured by that. However, they remember what they have been taught about using humor, because it's very difficult for the police to deal with humor. They are trained to deal with violence and these things, but humor, how do they do that? So a group of them started bringing swimming suits when they knew that the hoses were out. Oh yeah, that hurt. But they stood there and they were laughing and dancing and trying to make the best out of a very horrific situation. So in total, more than 2,000 children and adults were arrested. But the world was watching. The world saw what was happening. And they managed to reach mass media and a lot of attention. And they gained a lot of support because they managed to stay nonviolent. And this reached President Kennedy. And he knew that he had to do something about it. So this is not the only place where these methods have been used, where nonviolent direct action and civil disobedience have been used. There's been in several different social justice movements. Indian independence movement, Gandhi, the suffragettes, anti-slavery movement, freedom riders, and it's been used so many times, and it's been a huge success, almost every single time. We who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creators of the tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We bring it out in the open where it can be seen and dealt with. Very beautiful quote from Martin Luther King, who was himself arrested 29 times. Normally we think about people who get arrested as criminals, but I'm sure most people in this room do not look at Martin Luther King as a criminal. So, but what about the public? Yes, they might look at people as criminal. They might disagree. And actually, if they're disagreeing with what we are doing, it might be a very good sign. Because this is from the Freedom Riders sit-ins in 1961. As you can see, most people, 61%, disapproved of their action. And 57% felt that it hurts their cause. It actually makes it worse. However, it was one of the most successful things in the civil rights movement. And they managed to get as far as they got because of this. So if they would have been listening to the public, who knows where we would have been today. So what about modern history? Extinction Rebellion. I'm sure many of you have heard about them. So they are using the same tactics, nonviolent direct action and civil disobedience. In April, they had 1,100 arrests. They had 5 blockages for 11 days. It was totally peaceful protest. They had lots of fun, and they were singing together and making fun of the situation, while at the same time staying serious and pushing the government. And they managed to get the UK to declare climate emergency. They managed to get a lot of support, celebrity support, MP support, and massive media coverage. And now more than 30 countries have their own Extinction Rebellion group. And they, as well, they inspired Animal Rebellion, which I find very beautiful and quite important. And they are focused on mass participation and sacrifice, which is a model that has been used and that we are also now using for Animal Rebellion. So the first element is that you create a protest environment that is welcoming, friendly, and inclusive. So Extinction Rebellion had fun, colorful protests with music and dancing. A key part of achieving this is by having non-violent direct action training accessible for everyone. So that we know how to be respectful and treat those, even those we don't like, with respect, and always be kind. Even if we disagree, we will just have to agree to disagree sometimes. So you want an environment where everyone is welcome. We're talking grandmas, children, everyone can come out on the streets. Of course, there is different levels of risk, but we should have an environment where we basically create a community, just who also advocates for what is right. So let's look at XR's demand. So tell the truth. Government must tell the truth by declaring a climate and ecological emergency, working with other institutions to communicate the urgency for change. Number 2, act now. Government must act now to halt biodiversity loss and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by net zero by 2025. Beyond politics, government must create and be led by the decisions of a citizens' assembly on climate and ecological justice. But why won't XR talk about climate trashing animal agriculture? Why aren't they mentioning it? So Animal Rebellion is formed because we felt it was a duty to communicate the urgent need to transition to a sustainable and just plant-based food system. This has not been present in the XR narrative. It has to be communicated, and the national discussion Extinction Rebellion has created makes great opportunity to communicate this message, which we as Animal Rebellion are very happy for. We cannot end the climate emergency without addressing the animal emergency. This is how Extinction Rebellion inspired Animal Rebellion. So through their protest, we have woken up to the climate and ecological emergency and acknowledged the urgent need for action. We have also been truly impressed by their non-violent protests, their culture, and their organizing structure. We want to join the Extinction Rebellion movement to bring about transformative change in society to avert climate breakdown and mass extinction. So Animal Rebellion was born. Who are we? Animal Rebellion is a mass volunteer movement that uses method of non-violent civil disobedience to end the animal agriculture and fishing industries, halt mass extinction, and minimize the risk of climate breakdown and social collapse. In solidarity with Extinction Rebellion and a part of Movement of Movements, Animal Rebellion will mobilize 10,000 animal advocates for a 2-week rebellion starting October 7. We are forming a movement of movements. Many different social movements will come together to collectively demand change in society and build a better world. We won't all agree, but history shows that when different groups come together and unify, massive change will follow. We aim to bring the animal justice movement to join with Extinction Rebellion, and more will follow. So Extinction Rebellion, Animal Rebellion, and other social movements will blockade London to force the government to act on climate change. So there are 2 key objectives: stop climate breakdown, mass extinction, and ecosystem collapse. This is a time of great urgency. All movements need to overcome their differences and work together to transform our society. We have no choice but to succeed. And if we come together, we can build a more beautiful world. So, end animal farming and fishing and transition to a sustainable and just plant-based food system. Extinction Rebellion have created a national conversation about the climate emergency. This is an incredible opportunity to shift public opinion about the urgent need to end animal farming and fishing and transition to a sustainable and just plant-based food system. So let's look at our plan. So in the end of June, we met with 18 animal justice organizations to enlist support. And then we launched Animal Rebellion at the official Animal Rights March. I'm sure some of you were there. It was a really, really beautiful day. And then now, where we are at now, is we're traveling the UK and Europe to give talks promoting Animal Rebellion. We are providing nonviolent direct action training and form action affinity group, as well as escalating nonviolent direct action. So this is where we are now. And October the 7th, we will be occupying Smithfield Meat Market in London. So this will happen at the same time as Extinction Rebellion are occupying several different sites. And then we will negotiate with the government to meet the rebellion's demands. And then we will continue momentum. And we will not give up until our demands are met. So if we need to go through this circle over and over again, we will. So, but what about Animal Rebellion's demand? Yeah, we have some demands. We're joining, of course, we're joining up with Extinction Rebellion's demand because that's how Movement of Movement works. We are coming in on the field to tackle the climate issue from the animal justice perspective. So, but we have something to add to the demands. So, Animal Rebellion tell the truth. Animal Rebellion understand this demand will not be met unless telling the truth includes the government declaring that the industries of animal farming and fishing are leading contributors to climate breakdown and ecosystem collapse, and communicating the urgent need to transition to a sustainable and just plant-based food system. Number 2, act now. Animal Rebellion understand this demand will not be met unless government action includes ending the industries of animal farming and fishing and leading the transition to a sustainable and just plant-based food system alongside other important measures. Beyond politics, Animal Rebellion understand this demand will not be met unless the Citizens' Assembly has the mandate to discuss and power to legislate for the transition to a sustainable and just plant-based food system. Okay, so how are we going to be on the streets with people we disagree with? Let's say carnists or farmers or different people. So treat each other with respect. I guess we can all treat each other with love and respect. Normally we often do that on the bus in our everyday life. We don't really think about what divides us. So it's time to focus on what unites us instead of what divides us, because every single person in this room has several things that divides us. However, we have way more that unites us if we start looking at these things. So instead of creating all this chaos, let's try to find what we can do together to make this future better. And be open, because we all have things to learn. So, okay, we might be vegans in this room right now. However, I'm sure none of us are 100% perfect. And I'm sure we can all learn from the environmentalists what they are doing to get a better environment for the climate. So I'm sure we can learn something from them, and we can learn them something right back. So how does vegan advocacy work in this context? If we are going to be on the streets for weeks, we of course will have lots of conversations with other people. And instead of going up there with the intention of we are going to debate, we are going to argue about who is right and who is wrong, we can try to organically have great conversations together. And most of the time, I do think we end up in having good conversations about animal justice and environment and how we can be better. Because the reason we are on the streets in the first place is to improve ourselves and the society. Okay, so let's look at our principles and values. We are an anti-speciesist movement that has a shared vision of change, creating a world that protects beings of all species for generations to come. We set our mission on what's necessary, mobilizing 3.5% of the population to achieve wider system change, including a transition to a plant-based food system, using ideas such as momentum-driven organizing to achieve this. We need a regenerative culture, creating a culture which is healthy, resilient, and adaptable. We openly challenge ourselves and our toxic system, leaving our comfort zones to work in alliance with multiple movements and take action for change. We value reflecting and learning, following a cycle of action, reflection, learning, and planning for more action. Learning from other movements and contexts as well as our own experiences. We welcome everyone and every part of everyone, working actively to create safer and more accessible spaces. We actively mitigate for power, breaking down hierarchies of power for more equitable participation amongst all beings, yes, animals included. We avoid blaming and shaming. We live in a toxic system, but no one individual is to blame. We are a nonviolent network, using nonviolent strategies and tactics as the most effective way to bring about systemic change. We are based on autonomy and decentralization. We collectively create the structures we need to achieve our vision and mission. Anyone who follows this core principle and values can take action in the name of animal rebellion. We will occupy Smithfield Meat Market in London from October 7 to call for a transition to a sustainable and just plant-based food system. And we're going to do this peacefully and with love in our hearts. This was a picture taken from the 17th of August while we launched Animal Rebellion. So what we did, the march started, basically a group of us, we run from the march, run straight to Smithfield, because it was a mini nonviolent direct action training. I gave that one during the official Animal Rights March, and right after I gave that training, we were a group of 10 people running off to Smithfield, climbing up on the roof, dropping that banner, and we managed to get back to the declaration of Animal Rebellion that was taking place in the end rally of the official Animal Rights March in London. So, yeah, we will occupy Smithfield, and I hope many of you will be there as well. And not only many of you, bring your groups, bring your country, bring buses over. We need every single one, because we are a mass volunteer movement, and there is so much you can do to be a part of this. You can attend an NVDA training. It's going to be one on Monday here in Luxembourg. Please contact me at any point to get more information about this. Join the rebellion, October 7th to the 19th, for as many days as you can. If you can come from the 8th to the 12th, that's good. Just come, bring your tent, bring your family, bring everyone. Book time of work, just come, be there. It's going to be where it's happening. You don't want to miss this. It's going to be history. And if you can, get arrested. if you can't, then don't. Come and support those who get arrested and be a part of this rebellion. Quit your job if you can. If you don't, then don't. But maybe this is the time. Some of us often think about, oh, I want to quit my job. I'm not really sure yet. Maybe this is it. Who knows? And spread the word. Spread it to people. Talk to people. Tell people that animal rebellion is happening. Start or join a local group. Contact us and start up your local group. It will be amazing to see all the countries in the world having animal rebellion or having someone trying to fight the system and get system change on the ground. So volunteer. Please fill out our volunteer form. You can find it on the webpage. I also have someone, so if you want to fill them out, please come to me. And if you can, donate. Of course, it's all volunteer movements. We need every resource that we can to get this going. The animals need you. Join us October 7th. Animal Rebellion. Thank you.